Mojaki. It's actually nice to have faces to names of people that I've spoken to on the evening. Holly, Corbus, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for the Hollard Big Ads for Small Business webinar. As you know, you would have your submissions for this initiative. Something's coming across really badly. I'm not sure if it's my connection or not. And what we wanted to do as a part of this event was to give you something that could actually provide some value to you. And we thought best than to do that than Pavlo Phitidis. We've given you a little bit of background about who he is. And instead of me introducing him and going on and on, let me rather hand over to Pavlo and ask him to do his thing as best as he does. Over to you, Pavlo.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Zinzile. Good morning, everybody. Today is a spider juice day. It's an action day. I had a look at all the comments that were made with everybody who registered to be part of this event. And it became very, very clear to me. It's about customers, cash flow, holding them, winning them, securing them, and making things happen in a very practical sense. And if a business is about action, then we should all be wearing superhero action related shirts. And Soli, I'm sure there's a fashion opportunity in amongst your community to put a fashion symbol of an action hero, because no doubt you would have seen in your history that a business doesn't just appear, it's built, it's made from the hands of people. What I would really appreciate is if we could all switch our cameras on. You know, this year has been a year of webinars. Webinars are dreadful, they're terrible. You will see that we've organized this as a big meeting so we can see real people, we can engage with each other. There's nothing more satisfying and meaningful, especially for me, and I'm sure in hope for you too, when I can look at you and say, good morning, Kurbis, and I can see a smiling face. Jackie, how are you doing? And I'm doing a home invasion with you, and I can see your family behind you in pictures. It's wonderful being able to create some human contact in this medium of webinars. So with that, I'm going to be giving some very, very, what I hope to be, or what I hope is very practical insight into things that we often take for granted, but sometimes stating the obvious can be extremely helpful and useful. And I'm going to take a very different approach in how I share a practical approach to finding customers, winning customers, and holding customers. Because I'm going to start off with a story of someone that I've worked with. Look at that man. Can you see? Does he look happy to you? He's a real life person, incidentally. And his real name is Kevin Van Dam. He lives and exists in the United States of America. And he was one of my first American clients that I worked with. This is going back to 2012. Should I tell you why he looks happy? Because he really is a happy man. Well, Jackie, this man makes $10 million a year. And he makes his money fishing. He is the world's top freshwater bass sports fisherman. The United States has 39 million registered bass fishermen. It is a big market. It's about 13–14% of the American population. Bass equipment's expensive. There are boats, there are trucks, there are rods, there are reels, there are lures, there's fishing line, there are competition entry fees, there's travel, there's accommodation. It is a big business in the United States of America. And Kevin Van Dam makes $10 million a year, every year, fishing. He makes that money because he always wins. And I want to tell you why. In what Kevin does, it's really no different to what we do. But the first reason that he constantly wins is he decided to specialize in bass fishing. Yet there are many different species of fish out there, many different species of fish. He decided to specialize in bass fishing alone. Bass are found in fresh water. They have a particular personality and character. They're grumpy, aggressive fish. They're extremely territorial, and they make for terrible company. They don't hang out in schools at all. They're a miserable species of fish. He understands their psychology. In order to win consistently, not only did he have to understand their psychology, but he needed to understand how they behave underwater. Now, in the United States, of 12 months, 4 months are when the competitions run. The remaining 8 months, the weather's terrible. And really, for most of the time, they're not running competitions. And what Kevin Van Dam does is he gets his poor wife and he puts her into an RV. Do you know what an RV is? A recreational vehicle. It's like a caravan on wheels, but it's the size of a small house, because in the United States, everything is huge, from their food servings to their RVs. He drives his wife right across the United States to all the main lakes where the main competitions get held in the 4 to 5 month summer periods. Inside of his RV, he has got a hot water diving suit, because those lakes can get very cold. He arrives at these campsites. His poor wife has to set up camp, and Kevin Van Dam goes and dives in these lakes. And he looks to understand and see what the lakes look like from a structure point of view. Where are the rocks? Where are the reeds? Are there any broken trees? And he understands the environment that bass like to habitat. He climbs out of these lakes, and he has got a portfolio of these massive marine maps of the lakes. And he makes his markings where in his diving, he saw the best place for bass to be. His maps of freshwater lakes in the United States have got more detail than the American military have of their own maps. He then went and bought one of the fastest boats on the circuit. And the reason for this is that when the competition starts and the bell goes, he or she who gets to a fishing spot first, the competition rules are that you cannot be within a 50-meter radius of him. So he has the maps, he knows the lakes, he knows where he needs to get to, and he gets there first. The second thing he showed me is when I climbed onto his boat, he pressed a button on the console, and out of the decks of the boat came these fishing tackle boxes. Kevin Van Dam carries about 3,000 fishing lures into every competition. The lure is that plastic bit over there. It looks like a little fish that bass would eat. So it's an attempt to, when you cast it in the water and pull it past the bass either sees a threat or it sees a meal. It attacks the fish, and the fish has got a series of hooks on it, which allow you to catch the bass. Now, there are different color lures. There are different shape lures. There are different sizes of lures. Some are rubber, some are plastic, some are cork. Some dive deep, some work on the surface. Every lure is designed for a particular purpose, and the colors make an enormous difference. He said to me, Pavlo, you know what my competitors take to competitions? He says they take between 300 and 600 lures. And I said, but Kevin, 3,000 lures. He said, wait, I'll explain my reasoning now. He then showed me a rod rack. So when you fish for bass, you have a fishing rod. You can see part of the rod over there. The length of the rod and the stiffness of the rod have a big impact, he explained to me, on how the lure behaves in the water. Sometimes you need a long, thin, flicky rod. Sometimes you need a short, stiff rod, depending on what you believe lies under the water that most of his competitors are guessing, but Kevin Van Dam knows, because in the winter months, he was under the water alongside the bass. My competitors, he says, take 6 rods when they go into competitions. I take 12. And I said to him, Kevin, why do you have to have the biggest boat, the most lures, the most rods? And he turned around and he said, Pavlo, on the day of the competition, the one thing that you cannot foresee is what the weather is doing. If the sun is just here and the clouds are just there and the wind is doing just this, if I don't have the perfect position with the perfect rod and the perfect lure, it could cost me $10 million. Kevin Van Dam is the top bass fisher in the world. And I'm going to talk to his story in terms of how we as business owners need to behave like Kevin Van Dam if we want to find, win, and secure customers that help us build businesses, not only to generate income, but that can one day be sold.
Pavlo, I don't know if it's just me, but you seem to have frozen up.
Thanks, Kobus. I'll get hold of him and he'll join again in a minute.
Ain't technology grand, folks?
Yeah, it's great when it works and not so much when it doesn't. Yeah, so I think Pippa's trying to get a hold of Pavlo so we can get him back on the line. We apologize. And I think all of us, having been exposed to what's been happening with technology, are quite familiar that sometimes things just tend to go a little bit wonky. Pippa, are we having any luck?
Yes, so he's aware of it. He's rejoining. He'll be with us in 30 seconds. Apologies.
Okay. Fantastic, not to worry. Lovely to see other people on the call as well. I hadn't had a chance to say hello. Hyman, Will, Alison, Quirvis. There's 2 Quirvises. I see Pamandla, lovely to see you. Jakes, Penny, Raisa, Clifford, Ahmed, MK. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I really hope that once Pavlo comes back on, we can continue. But I hope that you're enjoying what he's sharing so far. I mean, I didn't know that bass fishing was a thing and that it could be so lucrative. Very interesting lesson for each of us.
If I can just explain, Senzi, Kobus Senior and Kobus Junior, we both involved.
Okay, that makes sense. Hello, and are you in business together then?
Yes, absolutely. It's a father-son combination, and since he's left school, I mean, he's a man of 40 years old now. So he's been with me forever.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Incredible. Well, thank you both for being here, Kobus Senior and Kobus Junior.
It is my pleasure. Good day to everybody there.
Thanks, Kobus. Looks like Pavlo's back. Okay, Pavlo, the spidey sense is strong with you today.
It is. Folks, I'm really sorry about that. At the beginning of lockdown, I bought 2 brand new, top-of-the-range Dell machines. They've consistently given me problems. I wrote a letter to Michael Dell complaining about his products, and his response was to proceed against me legally with threats from lawyers. So we're in the process of a very interesting session. As it evolves and matures, I'll share the story because it makes for a good lesson on how not to run a business, despite the fact that it's a very successful business in its own right. So my apologies for that. Hopefully it won't happen again. It seldom does during an event like this, but let's continue. Back to Spidey Sense. Thank you for that, Zenzile, because that's exactly what it needed. Okay, so Kevin Van Dam. We know the story of Kevin Van Dam. I want you to think about your being a Kevin Van Dam in your business. So let's get very practical now. A lot of the questions I was asked in the registration forms were really, how do you stand out in a very competitive marketplace? There are many, many businesses out there. In fact, in South Africa, there are over 1.3 million .co.za websites. That excludes all the .com websites. It excludes all the .io websites, which are the more recent websites for tech companies. There is an enormous amount of competition out there, but an enormous amount. How do you stand out from the crowd? If your website is your shop front, if it's the window to the world of your customers, how do you stand out from the crowd? Because when I look at all the fish in the sea, certainly what I see is a large number of species. If those fish, the many, many, many species out there, are potential customers, people looking to buy services, buy products, what type of fisher person are you? And fisher person, incidentally, is the new language. It was recently raised on Good Morning Britain, where they said you need to call anglers fisher people. A big question was asked, well, what does that mean for the snowman? Is it a snow person? Because with Christmas coming on, a lot of people are deeply concerned in the United Kingdom. In any event, what type of fisher person or angler are you? And I want to put a little poll out there. Let's get a sense from everyone on screen. What do you believe makes your business special in the eyes of your customer? What makes your business special in the eyes of your customer? Product or service? Fantastic. So the features of your product or service, your service matters, right? Alison, service is critical, surely. Relationships. Relationships matter. Jakes, I hope you've got good relationships out there, my friend. It's not what you know, but it's who you know, right? That's what we get told. I don't believe it. Service seems to be winning. So if we look at the poll, we're sitting with 29% on product or service features. So I've got a great product or I've got a really good service. We're looking at 33% saying my service to my customers, what stands apart. People come back to me because my service is brilliant. Marinda, I see you nodding your head. Of course it matters. Relationships. Yeah, relationships. I wonder what they mean nowadays. Quality, always important. Quality is always delivered by someone who has an absolute belief in their product or service. So let me share with you what we are seeing out there. What we are seeing separate the winners from those who are struggling. We were all told many, many years ago that when you build a business, what really matters is having a great product. And in fact, this man, Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of the founding fathers in the United States, a thought leader in the establishment of the United States Constitution, for that matter, in 1771, he turned around and he said, if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. And what that meant is if your mousetrap, Denzel, is better than Mojaki's mousetrap, and it's going to catch mice, which were running all over the place, given the fact that they had poor sewage systems, they had poor garbage disposal systems in 1771, then Kurbis and Hyman are going to come straight to your store and buy your mousetrap. Everyone will hear about it. And in 1771, he was right. Because in 1771, there were very, very few products and services available. The horse was the primary means of transport. The stick of persuasion was a Colt revolver. It was the Wild West. There really wasn't too much. Whiskey was whiskey. It didn't have branding. Cards were cards. Those were the days in 1771. He was absolutely right. But then what happened is that this man came along, and in 1922, he was quoted as saying, you can have any Model T Ford so long as it is, I saw that, Hyman Black, exactly right. You can have any Model T Ford so long as it is black. And he turned around and he said, price matters more. There are more and more products out there in the world. 1922, people are buying on affordability and price. And who was he competing against? He was competing against the horse. He was trying to convince people that although a car costs more in the short term, it costs less in the long term. And in establishing the production line, he managed to get the price of cars down. And then what happened is in the late 50s and early 60s, this man, who is still around today, came along. And his name is Philip Kotler. And at this point in time, consumerism was growing in the United States. They had benefited substantially on the back of slavery and 2 world wars, and their economy was booming. Truth be said about the United States, that's how they grew, folks. That's how they grew. The war was over. The late 50s, people were starting to come back into society. America was rich and prosperous. Products were everywhere. Price competition was vicious. And Philip Kotler introduced a new way to set yourself apart. He turned on and he said, it's not about products. It's not about price. It's about who you serve. And he organized consumers, both businesses and us, into segments. So all of us on screen are classified as SMEs, right? We all SMEs? You've heard yourself being referred to as an SME? You know, my view is that an SME is a business that's doing upwards towards 150 million rand a year. If you look at some of the definitions in government, if I look at some of the definitions in the United States, in the UK, in the EU, we're kind of at 150, 200 million a year. And all of us are SMEs. Now, here's what's interesting. In South Africa, there are about 8,500 businesses that produce a profit before tax above 100 million rand. There are about 48,000 businesses that produce a profit before tax above 1 million rand. to 100 million rand. And there are about 1.4 million businesses producing less than R1 million profit before tax. The biggest segment of business in South Africa are SMEs. And I have a question for all of you. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Who feels that they get great service from their banks? That's me. Oh, Marinda, I'm coming to your bank. Who feels they get great service from their telco provider? Well, Jackie, I'm coming to your telco provider. Here's the thing, guys. We are all SMEs. We get treated as one glob of business. And yet we are fundamentally different from each other. The needs we have differ depending on sector and industry. They differ depending on our ages. They differ depending on our history and legacy. They differ depending on our ambitions. And yet we get treated as one collective called SMEs. So while Kotler advanced the idea of how to set yourself apart, he didn't quite get it right. Because from an Auric point of view, and what I'm sharing with you comes from having worked with 2,700 businesses, SMEs, in South Africa, the United States, the United Kingdom, Europe, Singapore, and Hong Kong. What we are seeing set SMEs apart in a highly contested competitive environment is that a business that recognizes it's not only about product, it's not only about price, it's not only about customers, it's about understanding what problem you solve and for who. Right now, this man has got serious problems on his hands. Who on this screen over here has ever spent money on anything that doesn't solve a problem? Not much. Yeah, you go buy a luxury car, sure. Is it a luxury car? Are you buying it for its safety features, its performance features, or are you buying it so people can think that you have made it? Nobody spends any money, including the richest of the rich out there, on something that doesn't solve a problem. 5 years ago, we started to argue with all our clients. This is how you set yourself apart. When you market, you've got to have a good product. You've got to have fair pricing. You've got to understand who you serve. But you need to understand who you serve in terms of the problem you solve for them and what the cost of the problem is that they have, so that your service or product is cheaper than the cost of the problem persisting. 5 years ago, this was the winning formula. It's not the winning formula anymore. What we are seeing out there now completely win at the level of a Kevin Van Dam are businesses that understand how to create brilliant experiences in solving the problems of the audiences they serve at the right price, with the right features and quality of service and product. This is the new edge of competition out there. You need to have all 5 of these elements in play. Does anybody recognize this woman?
They're all swimmers.
Do you recognize her, Kobus?
They're just taking in different positions in the field.
Yeah, so this woman, a month into lockdown, had 10,000 Twitter followers. She had about 300 YouTube subscribers. And she had about 6,000 TikTok followers. Today, she sits with over 3 million followers in 6 short months. Because what she did as a little-known comedian is solve a problem for an audience of people that struggled to listen to Trump.
We had somebody with a tremendous just a powerful light. And I think you said that as a majority of us, because it's and I think you said
Sarah Cooper mined all of Trump's press briefings. Those press briefings were held during the pandemic and shared right across the world. That was Donald Trump's view on how to cope with the coronavirus, which as of yesterday reached a milestone in killing 250,000 Americans. There were people who needed to understand what Trump's views were, what Trump was saying, right across society and right across the globe. And there were some people who could just not stand the sight of Trump. And what Sarah Cooper did is through comedy and through acting, she created a great experience for people to hear and learn what Trump's position was on trade, on China, on the coronavirus, and on many other elements that affect the global economy. But she did so by creating a fun experience. The product was comedy. The price was zero using social media. The segment were anti-Trumpers. The problems were understanding policy, and the experience was comedy and humor. That's what's winning today. I'll give you some really practical examples. A watch retailer that we worked with in around 2009, straight after 2008, we had the global credit crunch. Remember, the world was spun into chaos. We were told in South Africa in 2009 by our Minister of Finance, we are safe. He said we are safe, we need not worry. How wrong was he? Our banks were safe. But gosh, it affected our economy terribly and started the backward degradation of our economy, which we haven't recovered from. But what happened over here is that this watch retailer, who was selling watches that were averaging in price at around 300,000 Rand, he came to me and he said, Pavlo, I'm in trouble. He said, for the first time in years, as a second generation business owner, we're not growing sales. And I said, why do you think it is? And he said, because we're in the luxury market and people are in dire trouble. There's no money in the economy. So we did some interesting work with this man. And what we discovered is that he's not in the luxury market at all. His customers and clients had 4 problems that needed to be solved. Now, I want to ask all of you on screen, how many of you are wearing a 500,000 Rand watch? No, Jakes. Jakes, you're not being honest. You look like one of these tech multimillionaires to me. Not, eh? Alison, which hand do you wear your watch on? Let me see. Lift your wrists, everybody. Lift your wrists. Ah, Kobus has got a 500,000 Rand watch. I can see Casio, 500,000 Rand watch. So what was interesting is we did some very interesting work with this man. And he discovered that the people who spent 500,000 Rand on a watch were looking to have 4 problems solved. So on the chat, let's see who can get the 4 problems right. You had 4 different types of customers, They had 4 very specific problems, and he understood that none of them were buying 500,000 Rand watches as a luxury throwaway spend. Oh, the chat's very quiet. It's very quiet. It's a very, very shy chat. Ntando, not me. Not me or not me yet. What were the problems that get solved by a 500,000 Rand watch? Come on, Alex. I can see your brain thinking and thinking and thinking. I'm using spider sense, as Nzile puts it. Well, why would you spend 500,000 Rand on a watch? What problem does it solve for you? They needed to tell the time, Marinda. Yeah, they do need to tell the time. I remember I was traveling in Europe and I stopped in France at an intersection and I was late for a meeting. And you know, when you're not familiar with the environment, you get lost very easily. And I turned around to the person next to me and I said, sorry, do you have the time on you? And he turned around and he looked at his wrist and he looked at the time and he said, together did we buy my watch? He wouldn't give me the time. Punctuality. No, not sure I ever would. You would, Will. You would. When the problem you have, it will. Ayanda, status. Yeah, without a doubt. So of the 4 problems, one of them was people who needed to demonstrate status. They needed to show the world that they had arrived, that they were important. And wearing a 500,000 Rand watch suggested that they were important. In fact, we have a politician that did that not so long ago. The second reason was the genuine watch collector. Somebody who wanted to collect every single Rolex in a range. The third was the money launderer. Somebody who went and made money illegally. And in order to wash the money, they would buy a 500,000 Rand watch. It would keep its value and they would sell it shortly thereafter through an auction. And the fourth lot were people who were taking money out the country. So Mojaki, you and I would arrive with our extended families. We'd drop 3-4 million Rand into watches for everything from the 3-year-old kid right up to a grandma and grandpa. We would then travel overseas, and because the watches were exclusive and big brands, you could auction them off for the price that you bought them, turning your money into cash with the view to buy apartments and make investments in Timbuktu, wherever you've gone to. When he understood that that was a problem he was solving, and he started to position his business to solve those problems, in the midst of that crisis, he was growing at a compound annual growth rate at 24.6%. I want to test everyone's maths. Preston, I'm sorry, mate, but I'm choosing you. If you're growing at 25% a year on a compound basis, what does it mean 3 years later? 25% year 1, 25% year 2, 25% year 3. I'm looking at my chat. Who's got the answer? How big is the business? How much bigger is that business if you've grown at 25% a year? Ayanda's quick with answers. I can see she's got that whiteboard behind her. She looks very kind of mathematical and sophisticated. I'm nervous of asking her questions. 25% a year. So you've grown by 75%, right, in 3 years. 25, exactly, Kobus, 25% a year. You're sitting not quite at 2.5 times, Amit. That would be fantastic. Effectively, you've doubled your business. In 3 years, you've doubled your business. In the midst of the global recession as a result of 2008 credit crunch, the so-called luxury provider doubled their size of their business by understanding what problem they solve for who and giving them a great experience. I'll share another example, because in relationship-driven businesses, we're often told, no, the way that you get clients is through relationships. It's everything. A legal firm that we worked with a couple of years ago in the United Kingdom turned on and said, it's difficult growing a business. We've got to get lawyers who all have relationships with clients, and it's the relationship that drives the business. They were a legal firm that were attempting to do contracts for everybody and anybody across every part, whether you be a consumer or whether you be a business. Eventually, they decided to focus in on only divorce law. And what did they discover? People get divorced at 2 points in a marriage: the 7-year itch and the midlife crisis.
Sorry, apologies. This has never happened once in a webinar. Now we've had it twice.
And it was getting so good. I think it was the word divorce that did it. There we go. Looks like Pavlo's back.
Oh, that's just insane. No reason for that to happen. No
We
reason.
we think it's the word divorce that did it. Zoom didn't seem to like that very much.
It's like a Twitter thing where they block certain words. I think you're right, Nzila. So in this instance, and you've got my screen. Can you see my screen? Yes? Okay. It's how a legal firm started to move beyond relationships and rather focus on understanding who they served, what problem they solved, and how to create a good experience around it. Relationships are not good enough because relationships come and go. So once you've understood that actually what sets you apart is a good understanding of who you serve, but you must define it in terms of what problem they have that I can solve for them with a good product at a good price. And what experience do they want in order to learn about me, interact with me, and have me service them? If any of you are suppliers into Hollard, that experience is defined by the procurement department. They've got certain processes and procedures that they need to follow. And to the extent that you understand the processes and procedures means that you can create an experience that makes it easy for Hollard to engage with you. But Hollard's processes and procedures are very, very different to the processes and procedures of Anglo-American. And they're very different to the processes and procedures of Sun International. And they're very different to the processes and procedures of me buying a service from you. The buying process, the thinking of how buying takes place in an organization defines that experience. You must understand it so you can create a way of marketing to that organization, selling to the organization, and servicing that organization that fits with their processes and procedures, typically established in a governance process through procurement. So once you've got that right, what do you do next? The next thing we need to do as business owners is we need to turn the way that we market to find new customers or generate leads into a system that can occur without us. And when those leads knock on our door because they've learned about us, we need to create a system of selling that won't rely on you. Pambili, if you have to do the selling all the time, then it means the business is stuck with you and your availability of time. But if you understand when someone knocks on your door and says, I want your service, and you understand how to engage with them, to educate them as to why your service or product is useful to them and what problem it solves for them, we call that a system of activities. And once they sign an agreement or agree to acquire the product or service you're offering, you then have to deliver it in a way that fits with the experience they want. And that's operations. So every single business has got marketing to generate leads, sales to convert leads into clients and customers, and operations to deliver on your promises. If those three elements are designed into systems, which mean activities in a sequence that can be measured, that can be taught, for which you can design a job description and you know how to pay a person to do it for you. If you've understood how to build your system of marketing, your system of selling, and your system of service, and you have them designed in activities in a sequence that can be measured, it means you can design a job description to get the right person on board that you can then teach to do it for you and pay them appropriately. Think of it like this. You've got a cog that brings new clients to you. You've got a cog that converts those clients into customers. You've got a cog that delivers on the promise you've made. And when those three cogs start to work well together, it turns the propeller that gives you momentum in sales and growth. To the extent that you don't turn the way you market, the way you sell, and the way you service into systems made up of activities in a sequence that can be measured and taught, it means that you can never, ever delegate. I want to run a quick poll. Here are all the cogs in your business. Things were going fine, and next minute you get pulled back into the engine to fix the cog. Which cog is the most broken cog in your business? Which is the cog that always lets you down? Is it marketing to find new customers? Is it sales to convert customers into clients? Is it in operations? Or is it in procurement and buying? Oh my word, we got marketing. Marketing is the single biggest challenge, I believe. I'm with you there. 71% on marketing, 76, 78% on marketing to generate leads. Where do I find my new customers? Where are they? Where do I find them? Still 77%. A few of you with operations, very few with sales, nobody really with procurement and buying. It's not such a big deal until you hit about 60, 70 million rand a year of revenues. Then it becomes a very big deal. So we're sitting there at 76% marketing to generate leads. Guys, can I tell you something? You're no different to the clients that we work with in the United States, in the UK, in Europe. Marketing has become the single biggest challenge out there. And one of the main reasons for it is because still today we mostly sell product features, we sell on service, and the service is really about us. It's not the service delivered by the business, it's the service of me serving my clients directly. We sell on price sometimes. And Jakes, if you've got a really good price today, I promise you, tomorrow I'll have a better price because I have to in order to compete with you. Hyman, if you turn around and you say to me, my product is the best in the country, I promise you tomorrow I'll have a product better than yours. Because price and product don't give you a competitive advantage. Service, if service is delivered by you through your hand, it's not sustainable. Like Kevin Van Dam, if you try and be all things to all people, it's impossible to understand the exact problem you solve for who. Remember, we're all SMEs. We get treated as one by the big banks and the big telcos. but we're fundamentally different. To the extent that you specialize in saying, I am going to serve clients in a particular sector, I'm going to understand them deeply in terms of the problems they have and how to solve those problems. I'm going to understand their buying processes, and then I'm going to design a marketing system that will resonate with them. And when they learn about me and come on board, I'm going to design a sales system that will educate them. And when they sign a contract with me, I'm going to design a servicing system that will deliver the experience they want for them to come back again. It's the essence of what business is about today. And that's what we need to get right. I want to share a story about a lead generation system. This particular individual came to see us 14 years ago. He was 54 years of age. He had started the business at 29 years of age. At 54, his business was doing around 62 million rand a year. He hated it with a passion. He was a baker. His father was a baker. His grandfather was a baker. And his great-grandfather was a baker. Baking was in their blood. They loved it, but he hated the business of it. At 54, he was fed up. He wasn't able to get beyond the 60-odd million rand a year. Everything was full of trouble. His profitability was low. He was dealing with people issues the whole time, customer issues the whole time, supplier issues the whole time. Everything was grumpy and miserable, and he wanted out. He was selling into the hotel sector. He walked into the hotel sector and he would be met by the food and beverage manager responsible for buying food and beverage. We started to do some interesting work with him, and you know what we discovered? That in the hotel sector, 4 people make the purchase decision, not just the food and beverage manager. We learned that the finance manager was involved, and finance said they wanted everything for nothing now. We learned that procurement was involved, and procurement was more concerned about occupational safety and health. We learned that HR was involved, and HR was only interested in the ability to onboard a supplier into the hotel room for fresh baked goods every morning, for so long as they didn't have to employ or train their staff. When he understood that he solved the problem in the hospitality sector by providing fresh baked goods every morning, and the experience that was needed to be a quality product for food and beverage manager, a procurement process that observed occupational safety and health, a costing process that brought the product in at a low price, and an onboarding process that was seamless and didn't create confusion in the staff, his business began to grow. He built a marketing system where he communicated with 4 people in every hotel group instead of 1. And to the 4 people, he would put across the reasons why he was the best supplier they could have, given their particular need. Finance on price, human resource on seamless integration, procurement, occupational safety and health, food and beverage, a quality product. It took 12, 13 years for him to grow above R1 billion a year in revenues. Here in South Africa, incidentally, the last 8 years of the 12 years have seen us operate in a regressive economy. Getting this right and building a lead generation system is absolutely crucial. And why is it crucial? Because if you can't delegate it, it means the business will never ever grow beyond you. So let's talk about how you get that right. If you've understood that your job as a business owner is to build a business that solves a problem for a particular group of clients through a great experience, and you've understood how to build a system to market to those clients and communicate your value to them, and you've understood how to build a system, activities in a sequence that can be measured, on when they inquire, with you for your service or product, you can convert them from an interested party into a customer or client. And then you have built a system to deliver a service to them that creates a great experience. For the first time in your business, you are now able to recruit effectively and employ people to run the systems for you. If you don't follow this process first, how do you ever get the right people to do the right thing at the right time all the time? Because Ayanda, when I employ you to generate leads in the marketing system, activities in a sequence that can be measured and taught, when I manage you about the measured outcome. Ayanda, run the campaigns and generate 50 new leads a month for me. And Alex, when I employ you to do sales, I'm saying my system shows me, Alex, that I will give you 50 new leads a month and you need to convert 5 a month. So immediately I can employ Ayanda and Alex, and I can measure both of them on 2 outcomes every month, because the system I built to market and generate leads and to sell and convert leads is a system that I have taught Ayanda and taught Alex, and I can measure the outcomes. And if Ayanda can take care of marketing and Alex can take care of sales, it releases the most precious thing in the world to me. And that is time. Time to think, time to understand where to find the next group of customers, time to breathe. Because if the system of marketing and selling and servicing is in the hands of 3 good people who understand how to run those systems, that's how I get consistent organic growth in my business. I want to share one last story with you. This particular client that we met about 2007 used to work in all the big networks, the mobile networks. He came up with an idea to move away from selling voice and to start selling data. He argued in 2007, 2008, that the opportunity in data for businesses and consumers is going to be huge. He already turned on and said that services like WhatsApp and WeChat will kill SMS revenues for the big networks. Nobody would listen to him. So he left corporate life and he started a business selling data and data services. In a very short period of time, he grew his business to about 18 odd million rand in just 18 months. Corporate South Africa took off with him. He was deeply knowledgeable. He had a big personality, was very persuasive. Sales were killing him because he was sales alone. So what he did is he drew on all his relationships across the networks. And over a period of 18, 19 months, he employed 3 top, recognized, well-known, proven sales professionals. All of these individuals were in their late 30s, early 40s. All 3 of them were married in families with responsibilities. All of them left very, very viable professions to join him because they saw that he had seen the future and he was making it happen. All 3 of them eventually left his organization. He came to me and he said, you know what the problem in business is? There's a skill shortage. There's a brain drain. The integrity of people is false. You can't rely on anyone. He said to me, in fact, if you want to do something properly, do it yourself. And we had a very interesting conversation around how that was not sustainable. I had gone and I'd met with all 3 of his former sales professionals. And all 3 of them turned around and said, Pavlo, this guy was amazing. His vision is incredible. He's persuasive. He's smart. He said, but he is pure chaos. We were brought on board. We gave up great careers. And when we came on board, there was no process for us to follow. His definition of product was poor. His leadership was absent. We sat down with him and very quickly built a marketing system. We then built a sales system. Subsequently, since then, he had 4 business development professionals come on board who were all taught how to operate the system of selling. And within an 18-month period, 2 years later, he moved from around 18 odd million rand to 36 million rand. That's a 40% growth rate compounded annually. The simple missing piece was that he employed people without giving them a system to operate. As we move towards closure, I want to ask you folks one thing. The most valuable thing we all have available, and Pambili, maybe not for you. You've got many years ahead of you. Kobus, you've got fewer years than Pambili. Something happens at around, I'm guessing 40, 41, 42. All of a sudden you realize that time starts to run out. That you don't have your entire future ahead of you, that you've got to turn your many, many hours of building a business into a real asset, something that's going to make some real money. And it suddenly happens, and it happens very suddenly and very quickly. The way that we spend our time as opposed to invest our time is something we should all be thinking about. What is your actual job as a business owner? Is it to find a customer, win the customer, and service the customer? Yes, no. Yeah, Sully, yes. Not sure, Kevin. Alison, yes. Kevin, so. Kobus, no. I'm agreement. Bongani, yes. Jakes, yes. Marinda, yes. I see lots of yeses. And I see the chat's very busy, which is brilliant. So lots of yeses coming through. No, no. Carl, no. Sim, no. Clifford, no. Guys, I'm in the camp of only doing one thing as a business owner. It's not my job to find a customer. It's not my job to sell to the customer. It's not my job to service the customer. As the business owner, you have one job. One job. And your job is to build the system that makes the business happen. A system that generates leads, a system that converts the leads, a system that services the leads. We refer to this as working on the business. Because in your business, Kevin, if you had a team that were using systems to generate leads, convert the leads, and service the leads, it releases the most precious thing available to us all, which is time. And with time, Mojaki, that's how we move beyond organic growth rates into next level growth rates. If you take away one thing from today, please take away this statement here. Your job is to build the system that makes the business happen, not you making the business happen. And with that, apologies for the 2 interruptions of technology. Beyond that, I'm very happy to field some questions. Simply raise your hand, I'll call you out, unmic yourself, and we can engage on that basis, if there are any. Marinda.
So this is a little bit of a difficult one that I'm really struggling with at the moment. I am a photographer and I do videos for corporate businesses, but I have different target markets and the marketing is not the same for each target market. And that gets me to a position where I'm always stuck. My work is good, but it still seems like I have a general audience, even though I have specific target markets in the corporate sector.
Okay, you're absolutely right with that. I'm going to give you a very, very simple example. If I'm a plumber, right, I can fix pipes. If Kobus is a plumber and he decides to specialize in only working with geysers, which of us has a simpler value proposition to all of us on screen who've got geyser problems? Kobus will understand the language of what a broken geyser or leaking geyser does. I will argue that I can fix anything to do with your plumbing system. Kobus will argue when he markets, a leaking geyser costs you 87 Rand a month in water expenses. My service of 300 Rand to solve the leaking geyser will give you a return on investment for 10 months benefit. So in the first instance, you need to specialize in terms of the service. But here's the next thing. Preston also specializes in fixing geysers. But what Preston's gone and done is he specializes in fixing leaking geysers in A-income neighborhoods. And he's understood that in A-income neighborhoods, people are apprehensive, for example, about letting people into their homes. So what Preston says, I fix leaking geysers by never entering into your home. And he has developed an ability to enter through the roof, fix the geyser, and leave. And that way your home remains secure. There's no damage to the property inside the home, and there's no risk to the inhabitants of the home. So can you see how it narrows and narrows and narrows? Let's say Preston also fixed geysers in C-income neighborhoods. The way that he would communicate the benefits that he provides over there are fundamentally different. He would turn on and say, I will be in your neighborhood at this point in time. If you have a leaking geyser, let me know, and I'll schedule you in the 8-hour period of the day. Because he knows that in an A-income household, his call-out fee, which he adds to his service, is neither here nor there. In a C-income environment, if he goes into the environment and removes the call-out fee, he can offer a proposition that resonates with the mindset of a C-income neighborhood buyer of a dripping geyser problem. Does that make sense? Does it help? You cannot run one marketing campaign based on your service across a different range of customers or clients. The speciality we have to get right is to turn on and say, I provide corporate videos, for example, to mid-tier mining sectors, and I understand the process of coming onto site. I understand the occupational safety and health risks. I understand the interruption of workflow processes, and therefore I can offer a service that when I market to mid-tier mines, I can give them all the assurances up front that I understand their protocols ahead of me arriving there in order to create a video that's effective and efficient. Does that make sense? That language is very particular to them.
But I just have to ask this though. What happens then to the jewelry photography, because I'm a brilliant jewelry photographer, and to the corporate headshots, because I'm good at that, and to event photography, because I'm good at that?
All right. So here's the problem. Last week, not last week, the week before, on radio, I said to Bruce, the biggest problem with engineers is their biggest strength. If you think of the engineer, what does an engineer do? An engineer is trained to solve problems. A creative is trained to solve problems. If you have an engineering or creative talent, You look at a problem and you can see a solution around it. And I'm going to say this to you, I'm going to say it to you harshly, but in a very nice way. There comes a point in time where you have to just grow up and you're going to make some hard choices. Because if you're going to try and become an expert in headshots and an expert in food photography and an expert in underground mining videos and safety videos, just because you have the talent and the skill to do it, it doesn't mean that you should. Because if you choose that as a way to make your money, then understand you're not building a business. The only thing you're doing is creating a job for yourself. If I'm in your shoes and I make a decision to become an expert at jewelry photography, that expertise is deep and profound. And that expertise means that the only thing you should be doing is jewelry photography. Because you'll understand how the various jewelry brands work. You'll understand how jewelers think. You'll understand the mediums where they best advertise their products and services. And as opposed to me meeting you saying, hey, I can photograph anything, and I meet Sim, who only exclusively does jewelry work. When I look at her portfolio, I see 1,000 pieces of jewelry. When I look at your portfolio of 1,000 photographs, I see everything and anything. When I ask her about her portfolio, she uses languaging that resonates with me as a jeweler. When I ask you about your portfolio, you use the technical language of photography that doesn't resonate with me at all. It's very, very hard to do, and it takes an enormous amount of discipline. Kevin Van Dam could probably fish any fish out there in the ocean, but he narrowed his speciality so he could become expert at serving one client category. And through that, it's made him the best in the world.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Mojaki. No, you've muted yourself again. No.
Pavlo, thank you very much for your presentation. I truly enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. My pleasure.
So Pavlo, am I live now again?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment and maybe ask the question. Wouldn't you concede that the ability to work on your business is by and large dictated to by the stage at which your business is at?
Absolutely.
I mean, if I'm starting off, it may very well be necessary for me to get involved 100% of the time, to understand the business, to be able to identify things that maybe be able to delegate later.
Got it. The way that you start a business always is if you have a product, you sell the product to anyone and everyone that's prepared to buy it from you. And in that process of selling this product to anyone and everyone that's prepared to buy it from you, you start to understand the different types of people that are buying the product from you. There are two things you then need to do as you mature in the business. You need to look and see who's repeating product buys from you. Who's coming back to you again and again and again and again. And the people who are coming back to you again and again and again, you need to say to them, why, Alison? Why have you bought this pen from me for the third time now? How do you use this pen? What do you like about the pen? What don't you like about the pen? Because you need to start understand, firstly, who are the Alisons of the world out there and what problems is this product solving for them? The second thing you need to do, Mojaki, you need to decide if you like serving the Alisons of the world, or do you prefer to solve the Pavlos of the world? Because if you don't develop an affinity, an interest in the audience that you want to serve, it's very difficult, bear with me here, bear with me on this. It's very difficult to love them. And it really matters to love. Because if you love the customers you have, you will care. And if you care, you will invest. And to the extent that you care and invest, you learn and understand them more and more deeply. And that's what starts to emerge, an understanding of the Allisons of the world, how they think, how they behave, what matters to them, what doesn't, what media they read, so I can learn how to find them in marketing. They're thinking about how they spend money, so I can build a conversion system, a sales system, and what experience they want in receiving the pen, so I can create a servicing system. I promise you, if you don't love the customers you serve, if you don't love the sector that you serve, the industry that you serve, it's very, very hard to invest time to understand it intimately and in a way that will serve your business in the manner that I've described. In the beginning, guys, bear with me on this. I don't want to offend, but I have to use a harsh word. In the beginning, we all need to be tramps. You say yes to anyone and everything. Because in the beginning, you've got to get the cash through the door. You've got to put food on the table. You've got to live to fight another day. But as you build momentum, that's where you have to stand back, Marinda, and turn around and say, I'm going to make a choice in my life. The choice in my life is I'm going to go and do the things that interest me, or I'm going to build a system that serves the Allisons of the world. And that's the fundamental difference between building a job for yourself and building a business for yourself. Very, very tough decision to make, trust me. I don't work with startups anymore. I came out of startups. Very tough decision. To be expert, I had to be sure that we narrow Auric's service down to focus on a particular stage of the growth life cycle only. Horrible decision to make. Best decision ever made, though. Guys, I know that we're out of time. I do apologize for the two tech interruptions. Zenzile, perhaps you would like to take over from me.
Thank you so much, Pavlo. And I think you ended off on a very good note when you were talking to us about time. And I'd like to appreciate everyone for their time. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this talk. I hope that it has been very useful for you, because that's what we had wanted for it to be. Pavlo and Pippa, thank you as well for being on the call and for your time as well. And thank you, Pavlo, for persevering despite the technical challenges. Your spidey sense really served you well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We had said that the first 100 people to respond would get the book, and the book is on the screen, Reset, Rebuild, and Reignite. And we've got the list of those people who did register. You will be receiving a note from us about the book and how you will get it in due course. For now, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and to wish you a fantastic day further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was very informative and helpful.
Thank you so much, Pambili, for joining. We appreciate your time and your presence. Thank you, Mojaki. Thanks for taking part.